Law 45. Preach the need for change, but never reform too much at once is about the delicate balance between innovation and stability. In any position of power, whether you're leading a country, an organization, or even a small group, the impulse for change is often met with resistance. People crave novelty, progress, and improvement, but they also fear disruption, loss of control, and the unknown. As a result, those in power must tread carefully when initiating reforms or making changes, ensuring that they don't move too quickly or radically, lest they alienate or provoke their followers. When you ascend to a position of power, it's tempting to make sweeping reforms to distinguish yourself from your predecessors and assert your authority. However, human psychology is rooted in tradition, habit, and the familiar. People are attached to the status quo, even when they claim they want change. Overhauling too much too fast can make people anxious, resistant, and even rebellious. The key, then, is to present yourself as a reformer while carefully managing the pace and extent of your changes to avoid provoking backlash. This law underscores the importance of understanding and working with the conservative nature of human societies and institutions. While leaders often think that they need to break everything down and rebuild from scratch, this approach can be destabilizing. The risk of alienating people is high because the more radical your changes, the more you disrupt the familiar patterns people rely on for security and order. Too much reform feels like a threat to their established way of life. Consequently, no matter how well-intentioned or necessary your changes may be, introducing them gradually and cautiously ensures that you keep people on your side. The trick is to position yourself as an agent of progress, while reassuring people that their world will remain largely intact. You must give the impression of change and reform, but most importantly, you must avoid triggering a sense of chaos or instability. When introducing changes, you need to present them as extensions of existing structures rather than complete overhauls. This makes the changes feel less threatening and more like natural evolutions of the current system. In doing so, you can pacify the anxieties of those resistant to change while still moving forward with your agenda. To preach the need for change successfully, you should recognize that people are drawn to the promise of improvement, but they also need time to adjust to new realities. They want to believe in the possibility of progress, but they are hesitant to let go of what they know. Therefore, effective leaders must craft their message carefully, highlighting the necessity of change while providing assurances that the changes will be gradual and not disrupt the fundamental structures that people depend on. At the same time, preaching the need for change is a powerful tool for maintaining control. It positions you as a visionary leader who is responding to the needs of the people and the times. By championing change, you align yourself with the future, making yourself indispensable to progress. However, you must also recognize that people tend to associate rapid and large-scale reforms with instability. Even if your changes are beneficial in the long term, the immediate impact of too much disruption can lead to fear, unrest, or even rebellion. This law also suggests that change, when enacted too quickly, risks alienating those who are attached to the old ways. It is important to remember that those in power before you often have established systems and traditions that are deeply embedded in the culture of an organization or society. If you attempt to dismantle these too aggressively, you will likely face resistance from those who benefited from the old order. Instead, a more subtle and gradual approach will allow you to co-opt existing power structures and integrate your reforms in a way that minimizes opposition. A successful leader must understand the psychology of the masses and play upon their desires for stability and continuity, even as they preach the need for transformation. You must use the language of change, but enact reforms in such a way that people barely notice the shifts until they are fully entrenched. By the time your reforms are fully implemented, they will seem like an inevitable and natural part of the system, rather than a sudden upheaval. In political or organizational settings, this law is particularly crucial because power structures are often fragile. If you attempt to impose too much change too quickly, you risk creating enemies of those who feel displaced or threatened by the new order. Such enemies can band together to resist or sabotage your efforts. By introducing reforms in a measured, step-by-step process, you allow people to adjust to each new change, preventing them from feeling overwhelmed or mobilizing against you. It's also important to remember that successful reform is not just about what changes you make, but also about what you choose not to change. Some aspects of the old system may be obsolete or inefficient, but they provide a sense of continuity and familiarity. By leaving certain things unchanged, you give people the sense that not everything they know and rely on is being stripped away. These stable elements act as an anchor, allowing you to make other, more meaningful reforms without causing people to panic. Leaders must also be aware of the optics of change. The perception of being a reformer or innovator is often more important than the actual changes themselves. You can create the appearance of transformation while implementing changes that are far less radical than they seem. This tactic allows you to placate those who demand reform without risking too much instability. By controlling the narrative around change, you can position yourself as a progressive leader while maintaining control over the pace and scope of reform. Ultimately, Law 45. Preach the need for change, but never reform too much at once is a warning about the dangers of impatience and overreach in leadership. Change is inevitable and necessary, but it must be managed with care and sensitivity to the psychological and emotional needs of those you lead. Too much change too quickly can lead to instability, resistance, and even revolt. Instead, gradual and strategic reform allows you to maintain control, win support, and implement lasting change without jeopardizing your position of power. By understanding this law, you can master the art of transformation, leading people into the future while ensuring that they remain grounded in the present. You become the visionary who brings progress while protecting the foundations of stability, an essential balance for anyone seeking to maintain and expand their influence.